Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari A to Z Flashback, a series of explorations of the 150 games that make up Atari Flashback Classics for Nintendo Switch. Today's game is Flag Capture. This was a 1978 release for the 2600, developed by a guy called, not entirely sure how to pronounce his name, it's either Jim Huther or Jim Hoyther, something like that. Anyway, this was not a particularly well-regarded game, either at the time of its original release or in subsequent sort of retro roundups, sadly, but there's fun to be had here in both single and two-player modes. The main criticism is that it's very simplistic mechanically, and it's very simplistic in terms of visuals and sounds as well, so it's not a particularly impressive game, and that's sort of the main reason why people have always thought this was a little bit disappointing. But we're going to have a look at it anyway, because what you need to remember is that this game came out in 1978, and at that point a lot of game designers were still fine-tuning and refining exactly what concepts of genre in gaming meant, and what types of game did work as video games and what types of game didn't work. So it's a bold experiment, if nothing else. So let's go play Flag Capture.
Okay, here we are with Flag Capture. Now this is a game that's got a one-player and a two-player mode. So today I'm going to start by showing you the one-player mode, which is alright, but not a ton of fun. But this is a game that, I don't know if I want to say it shines in two-player mode, but it's certainly more fun in two-player mode. So I have enlisted the services of my wife to help us out in that regard. But as we've done with the last few episodes where we've done two-player things, we've pre-recorded some footage of that, of us playing together, and future Pete will comment over that when we get to it. But for now, I'm playing this live, or whatever. But anyway, let's begin with a look at the manual. So, Flag Capture, something about piracy and a man with one eye and cutlasses and all things that are nothing to do with this game. Alright, here we are. So, there is no narrative setup for this one, which always disappoints me a bit because I do love Atari 2600 narrative setups. But those are mostly a thing in the slightly later era of the console, around the time that, I think it was around the time the 5200 came out, because they both adopted the kind of the grey manuals with the rainbow stripe across them. And that's when you started getting things like the ridiculous story to Centipede and that sort of thing. So be sure to check out the videos on Centipede. The 2600 version and the 5200 version of Centipede have different storylines, don't you know? Anyway, in this game, each player controls an explorer. Your object is to find the flag using your explorer. The left controller player's explorer starts in the upper left corner square. The right controller player's explorer starts in the lower right corner square. So basically what you've got to do, you've got a big grid of squares and there's a flag hidden somewhere in it, and you have to find it. And the way you find it, you get one of two different types of clues. So you may get a direction clue, which points in the direction of the flag, and number clues, which show how many squares away from you that the flag is. You might also find a bomb, which sends you back to your start point, or you can find the flag, which is what you're trying to do. So there are several different variations of this game. There's a free-for-all two-player game, which we'll show you later. This is where both of you move simultaneously on the screen, and you've just got to try and score as many points as you can. There is a double two-player mode, which is where one player moves somewhere that they want to go, gets a clue, then the second player gets a turn and could use that first clue that the first player had, and so on. And then finally there's solo two-player mode, where each player has an entire go to try and find the flag, basically, and you basically have to do it in the fewest possible number of clues. We don't play that version because it's a bit boring. So the one-player mode, there's only really one way to play, which is timed. You have 75 seconds to find the flag as many times as possible. And there are a few different settings you can play with in this game. One is with a stationary flag, which means that the clues will always point to where the flag is. And then there's the moving flag, which means that, the flag is moving. In this mode, the flag continues to move in the same direction until a player finds it. The flag moves in a vertical, horizontal, or diagonal straight line. So it always moves in the same direction, and it can wrap around the screen as well. Yeah, okay, so there's some specifics about how it works when it's wrapping around horizontally, vertically, and diagonally there. So when the flag moves off the screen, imagine it moving it one more square up and over. Remember this concept and you will understand the diagonal patterns of movement. So games that feature moving flags can also feature a wall. The wall is an invisible boundary around the maze. When a moving flag makes contact with the wall, it will bounce into another square. The moving flag bounces at the same angle that it approached the wall. So it basically turns 90 degrees when it hits the wall. Okay, so like I say, we'll play a little bit of single player first of all, and then I will pass you over to Future Pete, who will tell you all about the two-player shenanigans that he and his wife, and my wife for that matter, get up to. So let's play flag capture. Right, so game select, one player, stationary flag. So this is the most basic form of the game. Hit game reset and off we go. So you've got 75 seconds, so you need to get going straight away. You press the button, that reveals a clue. There's the flag. 3 squares away. 1, 2, 3. It's down here somewhere. 5 squares away. 2 squares away. There it is. Alright, somewhere in this direction. 3 squares away. Over here. Over here. Yes, very good. Lovely. Always nice when that happens. You find that you develop a sort of instinct for this game after a while. 6. Ooh, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, you develop a sort of instinct for what the clues mean in this game. Because they're very vague, even if they're sort of... Even if you're right next to the flag. They're still pretty vague, so... Oh god, where's this one? Right where I started. Wonderful. Bomb. 2 away. Not there. There we go. Okay, so I got 7 in that amount of time there. Let's now switch to the one-player flag moves bouncing off edges. So now, the flag moves every time you get a clue. So, we start here, and we know it's in that direction, but it's moved 1 square. Nope, that's a bomb. So this really is mostly guesswork. Oh, there we go. Right, not in the middle. 2 squares away from there. But it will have moved to 3 squares by that point. Yeah, it's 5 squares, see? 5, 6, 2. There. No. No, that's the bomb. I should have remembered that. There it is. So, you see, you can still use a certain amount of logic to find the flag when it's moving. But it is mostly guesswork in this mode. Because you'll never have a precise idea of where the flag is. Because, 1, it's moving. And 2, you don't know what direction it's moving in. Because there's no indication of which direction it's moving. Yeah. So there's not a lot you can do in that mode. Then we have one player with the flag moves. And this time it wraps around instead of bouncing off the sides. So again, we do exactly the same. Have to figure out where the flag is. I think it's gone right up to the top of the screen now, hasn't it? Oh, damn it. Yeah, I think that's moving vertically, isn't it? There we go, there it is. So again, you can sort of develop a kind of instinctive feel. Alright, that one's moving up. There it is. Yeah, you can develop a kind of instinctive feel for where the flag is, but it's still very difficult. And I think the stationary flag mode is more fun. I think of all the modes I've played in this, I think my favourite one is the turn-based 2-player one, where you take it in turns to reveal. You take it in turns to reveal a clue, and then you have this sort of lovely opportunity to continually screw one another over. What way? Okay. Well, that's that. That's the single-player mode of flag capture. I now pass you over to Future Pete, who has no face, who will tell you all about his experiences with the 2-player modes in this. Okay, Future Pete here, ready to commentate on some 2-player pre-recorded action in flag capture. So, I am playing the green player, and my wife Andy is playing the red player. And we start off with a game of the free-for-all variation of the game, in which you both move at the same time, and you can both uncover clues, but all of your clues are pointing to the same flag. So you kind of need to pay attention to both the clues that you're uncovering and the clues that your opponent is uncovering, or you can just get lucky like I did with these last 3 flags here. Which didn't set an immediate great first impression of this game for my wife, who didn't quite get what was going on to begin with. But as you'll see, as the time goes on, we both get more comfortable with what is happening, how to pass out the clues, and the sort of things the game does to point you in the right direction. So there we are. There's Andy got her first flag. And this game actually ends up being pretty close. You play to 15 points in 2-player mode, so it can potentially go on for quite a while, but in this free-for-all mode where you're both moving at the same time, it's a little bit quicker to play, but you still have all the same considerations to bear in mind. That's 3 for Andy, so she's already catching up. It was around this point she said to me, I get it now, I understand what's going on. But then I started getting a couple more as well. It's strange, it's such a simple game, but you start really feeling a sort of instinctive sense of where it might be after a little while. But then you might also find yourself getting frustrated by a bomb or something like that, that's where you think the flag was, and having to go all the way back to the start. Which isn't a huge inconvenience, but when you're both moving at the same time, it can allow your opponent to sneak in and grab the flag. There we are. Yeah, it can really allow your opponent to sneak in and grab the flag from under your nose. And that's a really fun part of this simultaneous 2-player mode, because if you keep an eye on your opponent's clues and just sneak in front of them, it can be incredibly satisfying to snatch the flag out from right under their nose. It's a lot of fun, definitely. Yeah, and nowhere near as bad as the sort of reviews I've read of this tended to suggest. Because a lot of people seem to think that this game is complete crap these days. And for sure, it's not one of the most impressive Atari 2600 games, either in terms of ambition. It's very straightforward. In fact, when I was a kid, I coded something very similar to this game in Atari Basic on the Atari 8-bit, which gives you an idea of how simple it is. But it's a simple 2-player game that it's easy to pick up for even people who perhaps aren't gamers, quote unquote. Yeah, it's not bad at all. It's not bad at all. And with games these days being a lot more complex, something like this is really accessible to people today even, because all you need to tell them is you move around by pushing a direction, you press this button to reveal a clue or see if the flag's there, and that's it. That's all you have to know for this game, which is pretty nice. I forget who actually won this game. I think it was me, because I'm certainly ahead at the moment, but both games we played definitely ended up being pretty close, despite sort of it looking like one person was very much in the lead at one point. Because having a lead in this game doesn't necessarily mean anything. It just means that you've got more points than your opponent. It doesn't like give you an advantage or anything, or mean that you're all but certain to win at this point. Because every round, as you can see, we've equalised now. Every round is its own thing. So it very much comes down to the wire. There we are. So I won that one, but only by 2 points. Only by 2 points. Which is not bad at all. Okay, so then we move on to the two-player alternating turns variation, in which one player moves, as I will do in just a moment. There we are. So I can move to wherever I want and reveal a clue. And then Andy takes her turn, using my clue as a basis for where she wants to check. And then I go, and so on. And you alternate like that until one of you finds the flag. And you just repeat that once again until someone scores 15 points. And this is interesting because it's the same basic game structure, but the fact that you are taking it in turns to move and relying on each other's clues, it's a lot of fun. You can actually sort of mess with the other player a bit as well, because the amount of time the clue appears on screen relates to how long you hold down the fire button for. So the clue will remain on screen for as long as you hold the fire button. So it's almost in your interest to try and press and release the fire button as quickly as possible and get a quick glimpse of the clue without your opponent seeing it. Because there are numerous points throughout this two-player match here where one or the other of us didn't see what the other person's clue was, and thus we effectively had to fly kind of blind in order to figure out what was actually going on. So as you can see, I got pretty lucky with these first 4 points again. But again, as I recall, this ended up being pretty close. The slight disadvantage of this mode is that it goes on for a lot longer. Because you're not moving at the same time and you're not both seeking out the flags simultaneously, yeah, it does tend to last for a bit longer, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But if you're playing with someone whose attention span is a bit limited, you might be better off with the free-for-all game. I know certainly by the end of this game, Andy was getting a little bit tired of the whole thing. Because it doesn't really change, is the thing. It just keeps going. All you're doing is you're finding the flag. We didn't play the moving flag variation in two-player because that really would have gone on forever. So we've already seen sort of the effect that has in single-player. But yeah, I chose to avoid that in two-player mode for the sake of both our sanities. There is a third two-player mode as well that we didn't play together, which is where one player keeps playing until they find the flag. And they gain a point every time they check for a clue. And the aim is to find the flag with as few points as possible. So it's almost like golf scoring. We didn't play that mode either, because that's just a bit too similar to the single-player mode for me. And for me, that doesn't really take advantage of the two-player competitive spirit quite so much. But it is an alternative way you can play if you choose to. So that's sort of a method where you're effectively playing... You're kind of playing parallel solitaire, I think you'd call it. If you compare that to... there's certain board games work like that as well, that are described as sort of everyone who's playing solitaire, but you just happen to be in competition with each other. Stuff like Agricola is a good example of that. I mean, there is a slight interactive element in Agricola in terms of... taking the different spaces on the board and making things unavailable to other players, but for the most part you are concentrating on doing your own thing, and you're not able to directly affect what other people are doing. And it's kind of the same thing going on here, whereas in the free-for-all game and this mode here, you can mess with each other to a certain extent. Like, there we are, that was a super quick clue that Andy went for there, and that allowed her to get the flag in the next turn. I was very lucky getting that middle one there. But as you can see, 2 players of, I guess, roughly equal skill, if you can say that this game has skill. Equal intelligence, or mental faculties, I guess you'd say. It ends up being a very fair game in terms of scoring. Meaning that the conclusion can be uncertain right up until the end. Which is nice in a 2-player game. No one likes 2-player games where... Well, some people like them, but I certainly don't like 2-player games where it's a foregone conclusion right from the beginning. Where if one player starts dominating another player from the very beginning, the losing player just isn't going to have any fun. Whereas in this, because each round basically resets and starts from the beginning, there's no way for someone to get an advantage, and no way for things to get out of control and out of hand. Which is nice. So yeah, I basically feel that this game is a little bit underrated, a little bit unfairly treated when you look at particularly reviews from today, when people look back on Atari 2600 games and sort of assess them from a modern perspective. And I know I'm doing that to a certain extent here with this series, but I don't know. I think some people don't quite bear enough context into account, and don't sort of take things on their own terms enough. Because yes, in comparison to other Atari 2600 games, yes, this is very primitive. There are other developers who made games that looked much better, sounded much better, had much more interesting mechanics, did much more intriguing things with 2-player modes. But on its own merits, without comparing it to other things, it's a perfectly competent game. And it's an example of one of those many Atari 2600 games that sort of feels like not so much necessarily a complete game in its own right, but a means of facilitating fun for people who are hanging out with each other. Which is something I quite like, because it means that there's not sort of lengthy setup involved. There's usually not lengthy explanations of controls and things. Because the Atari 2600 controls, they couldn't be complicated anyway. By virtue of the fact it was an 8-directional joystick with a single button. There's only so much you could do with that. But yeah, this is the sort of game that's eminently suitable for getting a group of friends together and playing. And I think I've mentioned on this series a couple of times previously that for my last couple of birthdays, obviously not my birthday in 2020 because of the whole unfortunate situation the world is in right now, but for my previous couple of birthdays I held an event that I called the Davison Cup, and Atari 2600 games played quite a significant role in that, because they were easy to explain to people. Most of them had good competitive 2-player modes, and if they didn't, they had a straightforward scoring system that could be used in a competitive manner, and thus they work really well for that. Anyway, that is Flag Capture in 2-player mode. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please help out the channel by leaving a like or a comment and subscribing. New episodes of Atari A to Z are on Tuesdays and Atari ST A to Z on Thursdays. Check out atariatoz.wordpress.com for a full archive. Do please also check out my other projects moegamer.net, where I explore Japanese and Japanese-inspired games from yesterday and today, and videopackgames.wordpress.com, which aims to catalogue the small but well-formed library of the Philips G7000 Videopack computer, also known as the Magnavox Odyssey 2. You can also support my work on Patreon or buy me a coffee. You can find links to do both down in the video description. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.